This video is going to be the most complete Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader beginner guide on the internet. By the time you finish this video, you will understand every system you need to know to enjoy Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader without frustration. If you have questions or you just appreciate the effort I put into these videos, leave a comment below. I read every single one. Be sure to take advantage of the timestamps below to refer back to topics you want more information on later. Without wasting any time, let's dive straight into this amazing CRPG and how it works. Shout out to LUCKYGHOST for sponsoring this complete beginner guide. All right, the first thing you're going to do when you get into the game is click New Game. From here, you're going to be able to choose the difficulty. There's a few different difficulties. I highly recommend starting with normal. Unless you're really looking for a challenge, then you can move it upwards. If you would like a really easy difficulty, you can of course go down to story. And then if you want to customize a specific thing, like you think, hey, I want to deal with all this stuff, but I really don't want to deal with crowd control duration, right? You could come in here and customize it, and then it'll change it to custom difficulty. And don't sweat it. If you pick the wrong difficulty at the beginning, if you pick something that's too hard or too easy, you can change it anytime you want while you're playing the game. Next, we're going to go to the next section here, and we've got character creation. So you've got a few options here. You can pick one of the pre-made characters, or you could choose a custom character. So pre-made characters might have a few different archetypes, like one in this case is a soldier, one in this case is an operative, and one is a warrior. Don't worry if you don't know what that means, because we're about to dive into all of that. Just know that if what I'm about to go over seems a little bit daunting because there are a lot of choices, don't feel bad picking something that you're familiar with and comfortable with starting as. It'll work out just fine if you do. But, you know, soldier is going to be your ranged shoot 'em up kind of class. And then, the warrior here is going to be your up in the front lines melee character, dishing out damage and soaking it up at the same time. Then there's the operative, which is a little bit more of your pick away the enemy's defenses and, snipe them, do good single target damage kind of stuff. But let's say you want to make your own character, or you at least want to know what that entails. You're going to click custom character. So now we're going to go to appearance, and first thing you're going to get to choose is your portrait. So we're going to go ahead and we'll pick this fine gentleman right here. This is just what's going to pop up when you're talking. It'll be next to your text when there's dialogue boxes and stuff showing up. We've got appearance. You're going to get to choose your body type here, and you can choose between one of 16 faces, and you can pick 3 body types. You can be in shape, heavy, or thin. Then you've got your hair, your eyebrows, and your beard. So we'll go like that. Boom. There we go. We've got tattoos, which we can choose. And then we've got augmentations. You can choose 2 of these. It's just gonna, it's like your cyberpunk wear. You can put a little stuff on your face like that. And then your voice. Bold male is a fun guy. I really like that voice. I'm gonna go with that. Okay, so next up we have the Homeworld. Homeworld is the first strategic choice that you're gonna make. This is gonna affect how people see you, how they perceive your character, perhaps how they interact with your character. What, do they like you? Do they not like you? How do their biases lean? The first option is Death World. Death Worlds are essentially worlds that are so hostile to life that nearly nothing can survive there. The ones that do manage to survive are all the more hardy and resilient for it. So fittingly, your Death World character would get Survival Instinct, which states that when they get low on wounds, they automatically recover 20% of their wounds once per battle. And by the way, wounds is another word for HP or health. Wounds equals health. Wounds equals HP. If you hear me say wounds, that's just me saying health. So if your wounds are low, your health is low. That's just a Warhammer 40k thing. Now, Death World characters also gain 20% bonus to dodge and armor while they have at least 1 temporary wound. A temporary wound is basically a temporary HP. Think of it like a shield that you can get. Enemies have to deplete your temporary wounds before they can do damage to your real wounds or your real health. There's tons of different ways to get a temporary wound. You can cast the shield on yourself, or you can have different passives that activate it automatically. Death World characters do more damage to bleeding or injured enemies and do more damage with axes, hammers, and last weapons. So if you want to run a warrior with an axe, you'd be able to dip into the axe damage bonus, and you'd be able to cause your enemy to bleed to take advantage of that extra crit chance. Helping the Death World characters live up to their reputation of being hard to kill is the fact that they take less damage from flame, bleeding, and toxic damage. On top of that, they get to resist a stun, blind, or immobilized condition once per combat, and instead they gain 20% health. So instead of getting CC'd, they get healed, right? Brilliant. If you want to be hard to kill or you want to be up on the front lines, Death World characters are not a bad choice. Next, we have Voidborn, which are exactly that. Born in the void between the stars. They are not familiar with land, but they are familiar with luck, and they have tons of it. Anytime they fail a variety of different rolls, they have a 20% chance chance to instead succeed on the roll that they failed. Alternatively, anytime an enemy successfully dodges or parries your attacks, they also endure an additional roll with a 20% chance to fail. Your failure has a 20% chance to instead succeed, right? Nice luck mechanics happening there. 10% of the time when you crit an enemy, your critical damage will be doubled, and you can pass your luck to your allies by using abilities on them. Not only that, but you also have a 20% chance to survive when taking lethal damage. If you hate failing rolls during combat and love doing big damage, Voidborn could be the great choice for you. And if you're thinking of going Psyker, they're an excellent choice thanks to their extra willpower. All right, next we have Hive World. Hive World characters come from a planet that has a population so dense that the entire planet is essentially one massive city. As a result, they get strength in numbers, which gives them more resolve when they are surrounded by either friends or foes. Inversely, they are debuffed when they are standing by themselves. Now, in case you're wondering, resolve is what you use to collect your ultimate. So the more you gain, the more often you get to use your ultimate. Hive World characters basically shine when in the middle of the pack. Being near allies gives them increased movement and improves their performance with melee weapons. If you want a character that not only survives but thrives in the thick of battle, Hive World is a great choice. Next, we have Forge World characters, which allow you to choose to have extra armor, extra move speed, or extra critical chance. You have to choose one of the three, you don't get all three. While wearing heavy armor, they also get extra mitigation and can't be knocked prone, making them a great choice if you want your character to rock heavy armor. They take less damage from fire and deal more damage with plasma, melta, or power weapons. On top of that, their combat effectiveness ramps up the longer they attack an enemy, making them great for long fights. Because of the 3 different directions that you can go with the passive up at the top, they make for a pretty well-rounded homeworld. Next, we have Imperial characters, which get to add 10 points to any characteristic, like strength, agility, or so on. Plus, their party members gain 5 of the stat that they choose. When Imperial World characters get less than 40% health, they get a massive buff to their stats and resolve, and they also give their party extra damage against Xenos or demonic characters. Since you get to choose the stat that you want to increase, this homeworld will work for any class or archetype. Finally, we have Fortress Worlds, which are planets that are entirely immersed in warfare. It's not a question of if they will join the military, it's just a question of how soon they'll be ready. Each time a Fortress World character kills an enemy, they have a stacking 10% chance to have their next attack happen for free, which means they have the chance to attack more than once per turn. Their first reload is free, and yes, you do have to reload in this game, although battles are usually over before this is required, and your character automatically reloads between battles. On top of all this, shooting enemies also increases their dodge chance, and if you want to be a gun-toting soldier, Fortress World is not a bad option. With Homeworld picked, next you get to choose your origin. This is going to kind of determine a good chunk of your character's lore, and therefore how a lot of characters you interact with feel about you. First, we have the Astra Militarum Commander, which is great at buffing the group. He's also going to get ballistic skill, which makes him great for using ranged weapons. And he's going to get perception, which is going to make him great for discovering hidden loot and seeing traps. Next, you've got the Commissar, which allows you to give an ally an extra turn whenever they kill an enemy. Commissar is going to get weapon skill, which is going to lean them towards melee weapons. They're also going to get fellowship, which is going to increase their ability to interact with other creatures to deceive, charm, or befriend them. Next, we've got the Crime Lords, which gives you an interesting background story for sure, and gives you Surefire Plan, which will buff your ability to deal damage, dodge, or debuff enemies. Crime Lords are going to get weapon skill, which is going to increase their melee weapon effectiveness, and they're going to get perception so that they see those traps and hidden treasures. Next, we've got the Ministorum Priest, which is great for generating extra momentum. Remember, that's the resource that you're going to need to spend your ultimate. So these are going to help you get ultimates faster, thanks to their Warhammer ability. Ministorum Priests are also going to get extra toughness and willpower, so that's going to mean that they take less damage, and then they're also going to potentially be better with psychic powers. Next, we get Navy Officer, which gets Brace for Impact, which is an ability that allows them and their allies to take less damage. It's basically your damage mitigation origin. So if you want to play a tank or someone that's going to help mitigate damage for the team, this is a great choice. They're going to get Agility, which is great for increasing your initiative. That moves you up in the order of attackers, so you get to attack sooner. And they're also going to get Fellowship, which makes them more likable, more easy to befriend people. Next up, we have the Noble, which allows you to assign one party member as a servant. I'm not kidding. Basically, you get to buff the servant, and then they also do extra damage if they attack anything that you attack. Nobles are going to get an increase to intelligence, which is going to increase your lore knowledge of the universe. So It's just going to make your character smarter, and it's going to open up dialogue options for you. Then there's the Fellowship, which is going to make you more likable and make it easier for you to persuade people. And finally, the Sanctioned Psyker. This has enough depth to it to be its own class, because not only do you have Sanctioned Psyker, if you choose this, then you get to choose a subclass on top of this. So people don't trust Psykers, and instead they fear them. Psykers are incredibly powerful and unpredictable, as they are able to use psychic abilities on the battlefield. Psykers get a new tab here, which allows them to choose between being a Biomancer, a Diviner, a Pyromancer, a Sanctic, or a Telepath. The Biomancers can heal wounds and buff allies. The Diviners can buff allies and make them more lucky in battle. The Pyromancers are exactly what you'd expect. Masters of fire, set things on fire and battle more effectively against them. The Sanctic buffs allies and debuffs enemies. And the Telepath can dish out massive psychic damage. So if you want to go pure DPS, this is a great choice for the Psyker. Next, you'll choose your Triumph, which is just a bit of lore background for your character. You get to pick one of these three here. Which one you choose is really up to you. It's just a bit of flavor for the story. And same goes for the Darkest Hour, where the Triumph is your character's greatest success story. Your Darkest Hour is your character's biggest failure in life. People you run into will bring up both your Triumph and your Darkest Hour while you're playing the game, because as is often the case with massive successes and with massive failures, word gets around. Next up, you have your Archetypes. This is where you actually get to choose the class that you play. So you get to choose between Warrior, Officer, Operative, and Soldier. And note when you hover over your level 1 archetypes, which level 16 archetypes are going to be unlocked as a result. So the way this is going to work is based on which one you choose, you get to choose one of the 3 that has a line connecting to it at level 16. So if I chose Warrior, I'd be able to choose Assassin, Vanguard, or Arc Militant when I hit 16. Alternatively, if I chose Officer, I'd get Vanguard, Master Tactician, or Grand Strategist, right? You only get to choose one in the second row, not all 3. And then finally, it all funnels back down into Exemplar. Let's quickly go over what each of these is. Warriors are your melee class. They are great at closing gaps on their enemies and getting in their faces. It's not uncommon for them to kill 2 enemies in a single turn thanks to their cleave attacks and their ability to use charge as a free bonus attack. They are also great at dodging attacks and can cast shields on themselves every turn to absorb some of the damage that is inevitably going to come their way while they're standing on the front lines. Officers are going to be great at making other group members shine. Perhaps their most noteworthy ability is the ability to have other characters also attack during their turns. So if I had a particularly strong warrior in the group, I could use my officer to give the warrior free bonus turns so that he's getting to take an action every time my officer takes an action. Operatives are great at finding enemies' weaknesses and exploiting them. It's an interesting playstyle that takes a while to understand and get the hang of, but it can put out some amazing single target damage. Next, we've got the Soldier. This is your gun-toting damage dealer. If you want to rain bullets on your enemies, this is the class for you. Now, for the second row of level 16 archetypes, we've got the Assassin. The Assassin is great for putting out big damage. The Vanguard is great if you want a character to really lean into being the tank for the group. The Bounty Hunter is the ranged character's path to big damage. Master Technician allows your character to be better at buffing the group. Same thing for Grand Strategist. And then there's finally the Arc Militant, which rewards you for cycling through different types of attacks on your character. So if you want to use some melee attacks and then you want to use some ranged attacks, you're going to get a stacking buff every time you switch back and forth between the different types of attacks. And then finally, you get funneled down to Exemplar, which allows you to basically double down on some of the choices that you made earlier. After you've chosen your archetype, you get to choose your characteristics. These are your stats like strength, toughness, agility, intelligence, etc. But the first 2 are more interesting. You've got weapon skill and ballistic skill. Weapon skill is going to increase your ability to use melee weapons, whereas ballistic skill is going to increase your ability to use guns or ranged weapons. So in both cases, what it's really doing is making it more likely that you land your attacks. So if you hate when you use an attack in a CRPG and you miss, make sure to keep pumping points into weapon skill or ballistic skill, depending on which you're using. Next, we have Strength. Strength is going to describe how physically strong your character is. It affects the damage the character inflicts with melee weapons and allows them to lift heavier objects. For each bonus point of Strength, your character deals 1 additional damage with melee weapons. It also affects your Athletics skill. Next, we've got toughness. Toughness is going to define how easily your character can shrug off injuries, as well as how easily they can resist toxins, poisons, environments, diseases, and other physical ailments. It increases the chances of resisting negative physical effects, and it also increases the amount of wounds or the amount of health your character has. For each bonus point of toughness, characters gain 10% health. It also affects the carouse skill, which represents your ability to resist negative effects applied by some poisons, stimulants, or alcohol. Next, we've got agility. Agility is a measure of a character's quickness, reflexes, or poise. High agility allows a character to manipulate delicate explosives with finesse, which is why you're seeing a correlation to demolition here, or to keep their footing when crossing treacherous terrain. It improves characters' initiative, which is if you have higher initiative, your character is more likely to get to attack first or earlier in the battle. It increases your chance to dodge, as well as your reaction. If a character uses a melee weapon, their dodge reduction is equal to half of their agility. Next, we've got intelligence. Intelligence is a measurement of the character's acumen, reason, or knowledge. It affects your knowledge of Imperium, Warp, and Xenos lore, as well as your logic, your Medicae, and your tech use skills. So as you can see here, it's lighting up a lot of different things, and basically logic is going to make your character more convincing. Lore options are often going to give you dialogue options that you wouldn't have otherwise had, or the ability to maybe solve puzzles because you have answers through lore that you otherwise wouldn't have known. Medicae is going to improve your ability to heal party members with medikits. The higher the stat, the more effective you are at healing. And tech use is going to increase your ability to use tech throughout the game. Sometimes you'll find a door that requires you to have high tech use in order to pass the check. Sometimes you'll find a container that you have to crack open using your tech use. A lot of stuff is tucked behind tech use, so I definitely recommend having at least one character in your group have a really high tech use ability. I will say that the game gives you a character like this early in the story, so you don't have to worry about making sure your character has high tech use if you don't want to. Next, we have perception. Perception describes how well a character perceives their surroundings. So the perception stat will allow your character to notice that there's a trap or that there's a hidden treasure. This is what allows your characters to detect things that you can't see without them noticing it. It's really important that you have at least one character in the group with high perception. Next, we've got willpower. Willpower reflects a character's ability to withstand the horrors of warp, the terrors of space, and dreadful opponents that they are bound to encounter in the Coronis Expanse. High willpower allows characters to exert control over a crowd or interrogate a heretic. It also increases the chances of resisting negative mental effects and psychic powers. So this is a great stat for psychers. Everybody else doesn't really need it. Next, we've got fellowship. Fellowship represents a character's ability to interact with other creatures, to deceive, charm, or befriend them. High fellowship will help a character find a way to approach a gathering of unsociable servants or to effortlessly make deals with treacherous merchants. It also affects the persuasion, coercion, and commerce skills. Coercion is basically your way to persuade someone, but through threats and being a mean person, right? You scare them into agreeing with you. Whereas persuasion down here is the friendly way to get someone to agree with you, right? You get them to see your point of view. You make a good impression on them and they like you, and so they agree with you. And then there's commerce, which allows you to make profitable bargains with traders that you run into along the way. The game gives you 30 points to start with, but as you can see here, it's going to let you put 5 points in at a time. So that means you have about 6 decisions to make. You can put 10 points into 3 different choices here. The next choice you get to make is your void ship. You might have more than one choice here, and yeah, it's just cosmetic. You can change the name of your ship, you can let it pick a random one, or you can choose it yourself. Then you go to the next one and you can see a recap of all of the decisions that you've just made. You can also click here and change the appearance of your character slightly. You can change the color of the robe that you're wearing. You can turn your clothes on or off. You can show your helmet or not, all that good stuff. And that is the character creation process for Warhammer 40k Rogue Traders. It's a lot, but hopefully this helped make it more digestible for you. Now let's move on to the next section. All right, next up, let's go over the combat, because as in all classic RPGs, the combat is probably the most confusing part. When you first start the game, you know, you can kind of tell what you're supposed to do, but you're not positive that you're doing it all right. And you're certainly not positive what every individual aspect is, kind of at play here. So let's talk about everything that's on screen right now, all the information that's being conveyed to you and what it means and how to take advantage of it. So the first thing that we will look at here is going to be the top of the screen. This is our party. This is the people that we chose to bring into this battle. You can choose, like anytime you go and you land on a planet somewhere, you can choose what party you want to bring with you, which characters. So that's what we have here. The little yellow up arrows, that just means that they have leveled up, and we can come in here and we can assign stats and passives and things like that. But we're not going to do that right now because we're in combat. So that's just what the little up arrow means. It means they leveled up. And as soon as this battle's over, we can go ahead and assign those points. So now let's take a look over here. You've got the battle order. So it starts at the bottom and then works its way up. So we've got this guy, Heinrichs. That's the character we're controlling right now. He's going to be the next person to attack. And you can see the game's asking me what I want to do here. And then just above, Pascal's going to be next, and then the Enforcer, right? And so you can kind of use this to your advantage. The next enemy that's going to attack is this Acolyte cultist right here. So if we wanted, we could kill this cultist, and that way Argenta would have a chance to attack before anybody had a chance to do damage to anybody else here. So we could eliminate 2 sources of damage if we kind of intelligently take out the people that are going to attack before we get a chance to attack, right? So that's what this is for over here. It's kind of tell you the order of attacks that's being placed. The order of the attacks is determined by your initiative, and your initiative is partly determined by your agility score. So that's how that all kind of gets determined at the beginning of the battle. Next, we have our item slots over here. So you could put med kits here that you could use to heal yourself or other people. You could put grenades here. So if we open up our inventory, for example, we could have put grenades in those slots. That's what these are. We could have put any of these medic kits here. So those are the kind of items that you could put there, and you could assign them to those 4 slots. You can have 4 of them at any given moment. You have 2 grenades, right? Even though they're the same grenade, if you put 1 here, you can't stack them. So 1 grenade would be here, 1 grenade would be here, and so 2 grenades would take up 2 slots, just as an example. Next to that, you have your weapons that are equipped. You can switch through your different weapon sets. So this guy is wearing a greatsword, and then he's also wearing a staff. And so if we click this, we can do that. If we press X, we can swap between them, right? And basically what your weapon is determining is what type of attacks you have available through your weapon. So these attacks are available because of the weapon I'm wearing. So if we look at his weapon right here, there's those 2 attacks that we saw, right? So this attack and this attack, those we have access to because of the weapon that we have equipped. And same thing down here. If we swap over to our staff, we get access to these other weapons right here. Very useful. Siphon Life, always very nice. I'm treating him like a tank, right? So being able to do that is great. Hence our use of the staff as our secondary weapon. Now, that's what these abilities are here. And that's how you get those, right? Those are determined by the weapon you're wearing and what skills that weapon comes with. Whereas these skills over here are, skills that you unlock through choices you make when upgrading your character in here, right? So you're picking skills as you work your way around this clock and unlock all these passives. We'll dive into this in a moment and explain all that and how that works. Don't worry, but just know these are the ones you're going to be unlocking through choices that you make. These are the ones you get because of the weapon you're wearing. Then right here, we have Veil Degradation. So basically this is a gauge. We've got 2 gauges. Just be aware of these 2 gauges. So this left one here is your Veil Degradation. This is when Psykers are using their psychic abilities, they're going to fill up this gauge basically. And as they fill that up, the higher that it gets, the more likely you are to have, these warp invasions, basically mobs and other effects that can start manifesting themselves in your world while you're fighting and making the battle even harder than it already is. So just kind of keep an eye on that gauge and know what it's doing and what's going on. And this gauge goes down by 1 each round, but it goes up by 3 for each major psychic power that you use and 1 for each minor psychic power you use. So if you're using a lot of psychic powers, it's going to fill up fast. Just be kind of aware of that, and you might see a few extra enemies spawn into the battle if that's the case. The gauge on the other side here, this is our momentum gauge. So this is what is going to unlock what is referred to as our ultimates. Basically here, we've got on this character, we have 2 different ultimates, right? The game calls our ultimates a heroic act or a desperate measure. Now, how it's determined is your momentum gauge starts out at 100 at the beginning of the battle, and when things are going good, it fills up and you get to the heroic act ultimate. If things are going bad, like characters are dying, your team is dying, things are not going your way, it goes down and it becomes a desperate breach or a desperate measure. Now, Heroic acts and desperate measures are very similar. It's just that the heroic act doesn't have a downside to it, whereas the desperate measure does. So in the case of this ability here, at the end of the desperate measure, your character can no longer use charge for the rest of the battle, which is a huge ability for the warriors. This is your gap closer, and it's a free attack. So you can use an attack and a charge to kill 2 different enemies at once, which is amazing, right? So you're losing your charge if you use this desperate measure, which hurts a lot. Plus, your movement points are permanently reduced by 3. Don't worry, we'll talk about movement points here in one moment, right? So there's basically the thing to know is there's downsides if you come down here and use your ultimate that is the result of a desperate measure, as opposed to if you use your ultimate that is the result of a heroic act. It's all upside, it's all positives. Your character just pops off, does big things, and it depends which heroic act you're doing, but it's going to be good. So that's what that gauge is right there. That's kind of your ultimate gauge. Then right here in the middle, we've got a couple more kind of gauges here. This is our movement points on the left. And you can see here that if I tell my character, hey, what happens if you move here? It says, well, then you'd use 5 out of your 6 movement points, but you'd still have your 4 action points, right? So movement points are for moving. These are what determine how far your character can move in a given turn. And then your action points are consumed by your abilities. So this one here, it says Iron Arm costs 1 action point. So we could use this one, we could use this one, we could use this one, right? We could use all of these in one turn if we want to. We could do all these actions. Whereas if we look over here at our weapon abilities, you'll notice if you use this ability here, it says you're going to spend all your movement points and you can no longer use attack abilities on your current turn. So we can only use 1 attack ability, generally speaking. There are exceptions to that rule, but generally, if you use a weapon ability, that's the only weapon ability you can use for that turn, unless you're using something like your ultimate that's going to let you use multiple attacks in a single turn. Or if you have an ability over here that's going to reset your actions over here so that you can use them again, provided that you have the action points to do so. Because remember, this still costs 1 AP, this still costs 2 AP. So you still have to have the action points to use these abilities over here. And then down below, right here, we can see this character's health. He's at 34 out of 35. And to the right of the portrait here, we can see which buffs he has on him right now. So right now he's got a couple of buffs and 1 debuff burning here. It's dealing fire damage to him every turn right now. Okay, so now that you know what consumes movement points and what consumes action points, then you've got these little floating dots here. This is, you just click on these and it takes you to the people. If you're ever wondering like who's the first enemy that's going to attack so you can attack him, you can go over here on the left and just click on him and it's like, okay, I need to kill this guy. Right. And then up here, you can see all the buffs and debuffs for each character. If you hover over the little tiny squares next to their portraits, just something to be aware of, because you are going to want to watch for wounds and injuries. And so let's talk about wounds and injuries in Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader right now. So wounds and injuries are something that you're going to accrue as your characters take damage. So anytime your character takes, for instance, damage from a trap, they're going to get an injury. If they lose more than half their health in a single attack, they're going to get an injury, right? That's a couple different ways to get injuries. So 3 injuries makes a trauma, and injuries by themselves aren't that big of a deal, but trauma is going to reduce your character's stats. And so you generally don't want to be running around with trauma on your character. Your character is going to get trauma if he goes unconscious by losing all of his health, or if he gets 3 injuries. Those 3 injuries will combine and turn into a trauma. So you will lose the 3 injuries that you have, but you'll now have a trauma. So now you know how to get injured, which is traps and losing more than half your health. And then if you get 3 injuries, you get a trauma, and that trauma reduces your character's stats, thereby degrading his or her combat effectiveness, right? So how do we prevent all of that from happening? Well, that's where the medikits come from. So if you use a medikit on a character with a fresh injury, because there's 2 types of injuries. If you use it on a character that just got injured, it's considered a fresh injury, and that fresh injury will be healed with the medikit. If you don't use the medikit on the fresh injury within 3 rounds, then it becomes an old injury. And now old injuries are the same thing as fresh injuries, except when you use a medikit on them, it's not guaranteed that it's going to remove the injury. It's just a chance. So now you have to pass the check, and that's going to be based on your Medicaid passive here. So if you do start healing, it's a good idea to use your character with the highest Medicaid score, because they're going to have the best chance of removing old injuries, and they're going to also heal for the most when they do use those medikits. Just something to be aware of. Another way to get rid of your injuries and your traumas is to simply go to your ship and rest up on your ship. So when you go to your ship, all of your group's injuries and traumas will be removed and they're going to be reset. So that happens when you go back to your ship. So that's how your injuries and your traumas work. Next, let's talk about this right here, your wounds. So in Warhammer 40k, it doesn't call health. It doesn't call it HP, right? Everything that you're familiar with, it calls it wounds. And a good way to think of this is your wounds is the number of wounds that you can take before your character goes unconscious, right? So if you have 34 wounds, like this character right here, that means he can take 34 wounds before he dies, and different attacks will take different numbers of wounds. And when he's healed, he is now able to take more wounds than he was before, right? It's just basically a synonym for HP. Wounds, HP, same thing. It's one of those things that sounds a lot more complicated than it is just because we're using a new term instead of a term we're already very familiar with. But just know that wounds equals HP. And if you lose all of your wounds, your character goes unconscious and they will be revived automatically at the end of battle. Another great thing happens at the end of every battle. Your character's health goes to full. So if your character's getting low, but you're going to finish the battle before he dies, don't worry about healing him. That's a waste of your medikit. Just finish the battle, kill all the enemies, and then as soon as the battle's over, all your character's health will be returned to full health. And if you know you're going to be going back to your ship, it might even be worth letting one of them get knocked unconscious. Now, I haven't had a particularly tough time having enough medikits, so I have been doing this playthrough on normal difficulty, not one of the harder ones, mind you. So if you're playing on one of the harder ones, you know, you might be burning through these a lot faster, more than likely. So just know that you don't have to be too stingy with your medikits, most likely. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take a couple of turns in this battle and explain what's happening. So I've told you how it all works, but sometimes seeing it all in action, it makes a lot more sense. So this is a warrior I'm controlling. So he's a melee attacker, right? He's got a gap closer in charge so he can get to someone 6 squares away. It looks like there's no one else in range. Otherwise, I'd be able to get 2 people in one turn with him. So we're just going to take the one. We'll take this guy out right here with that attack. So that character's out of the fight. Then we have the option to use any of our other abilities. If we want, we could use this here to buff ourselves, right? If we didn't already have that. What I am going to do is I'm going to close this out with my charge so that he can start working his way towards the other enemies on the battlefield. So we'll come on back here. We'll use his action points as movement points basically with charge. Then we're going to end turn by pressing spacebar. Okay, now we're controlling Pascal. This guy's got both ranged and melee attacks. So if I click on the ranged attack, you'll see lines showing you every character that you can reach with a ranged attack right now. See those little faint lines going to this guy over here and this guy over here. Okay, I could also choose to use my action points to tactically apply exploits to enemies and things like that. Or I could run up to one and use my melee attack. My melee attack does 91 to 95 damage. My Deadeye shot is 90 to 92. This guy is an absolute beast, man. We are going to go ahead and let's go for a ranged attack because we just showcased a melee attack. So we'll shoot this guy here. Boom. Knocked him out of the battle. Now we have reload. This costs 4 action points to reload. And if we reload, it reloads the equipped weapon. So just know that you can run out of ammo in battle and you will have to reload in battle. Most battles don't take long enough for you to need to reload mid-battle. But on a weapon like this that only has 5 rounds in it and a particularly long fight, you may need to reload mid-battle, and just know that it's going to cost you 4 action points if you do. Okay, so there isn't really anything else I want to do on this character right now. Let's get to the next guy. Okay, so this is one of the NPC characters. That's why it has that yellow health bar. Okay, my character. This is another warrior I have. So I'm going to do here. I'm going to move here, kind of trying to make my way over to these guys. And I'm going to use this attack right here on him because that should be enough. We'll just use my super basic attack. Boom, it was enough. And now we can go ahead and use Endure, which is going to give us a shield, a +5 temporary wounds, which is like having a shield on you, right? So that's what the little blue bar is above next to my health bar right there. That blue bar is temporary wounds or shield, basically. They have to eat through these temporary wounds to get to my actual wounds, which again, that's your health. So it's temporary health next to my actual health. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did with the other guy. I'm going to try to get over here close to these guys with a charge so that in the next turn I can get at both of them. Now this is a soldier, this character. So soldier is going to specialize more than likely in weapons, you know, rifles and guns and things like that. So if I move the character here, it's saying you can shoot this person or you can shoot this person, which sounds great. We're going to do that. Actually, we're running right by this person, so they might take a swing of opportunity. If you've played other CRPGs, you know that if you run across within melee distance of an enemy, or if they run within melee distance of you, you might get an attack of opportunity where your character gets a free swing at them just because they're passing by. And the same thing goes for you when you're passing by them. So let's just do that to see if that happens. Nope, it looks like not, because we were running diagonal, so we didn't step on his square, apparently. Now we can go ahead and shoot this guy. Cool. And now we can use this ability here, run and gun, which basically is going to reset our gun abilities over here. So we can now do this and shoot at this guy as well. So we got to get 2 attacks off in a single turn thanks to run and gun. Great ability. And this has a cooldown of 1 round. So you use it and then the round goes by and then another round goes by and then you get to use it again. It's such a satisfying skill. Make sure you take advantage of that on your soldiers. Basically lets you take 2 turns in 1. Now we're going to watch the enemy take their turns. Okay, now it's Argenta's turn. So we're going to move over here so we can finish off this one we started. And also we're going to get 2 turns again, so why not do both? So we'll go like this. I do want to show you Idara though. So I'm going to intentionally not use this next kill because I want to show you something. So we'll skip that. Let the enemies take their turns. Oh, good then. NPC missed. I thought it was going to go and kill the person oh, he missed again. Good. I thought they were going to kill the people I left alive just for this moment. Okay, so now Idara is crazy powerful. She's got these crazy powerful abilities thanks to her staff that she's got. And one is Lightning Arc. And Lightning Arc is fantastic. It does so much damage. But even better is the fact that it's kind of an AoE ability. It arcs between multiple characters. Just be very aware of the fact that there is friendly fire in this game. It's very easy to, if this character here was 1 square closer, you see how when I hover over this guy, there's like a little square that lights up around this guy, lights up around his feet. There, you see the extra square saying, hey, this guy's going to get hit and this guy's going to get hit, both of them. Plus both of their health bars are flashing. That means they're both going to get hit. Now, if I hover over this guy, look who's got a red square around him. This guy down here, Abelard. So I would want to use my ability on this guy, not this guy. Either way, it's going to hit both of these. But if I use it on this guy down here, it's going to hit Abelard also. So let's go ahead and use it on him. Boom. Knocks them both out. Ends the battle. Now, after your battle is over, one of the first things you're going to want to do is press tab. Tab is going to light up all of the lootable corpses on the battlefield. If you see a white outline on the corpse, that means you've already looked at that one. If you see a yellow outline on the corpse, that means you have not looked at it yet. So we'll look at this again, and we can see here that we've got a bunch of loot. Now, most of the time is going to be worse than what you're already wearing. So when that's the case, what you can do is just click all to cargo, this little arrow here, and then click collect all. And that's going to send it all to your cargo area. And your cargo is what you're going to use to level up your reputation with various like factions throughout the game. So it's a really good idea to pick up literally everything you see. You have pretty much unlimited storage space. Once the tab fills up, it automatically makes a new one for that one. And then when you are interacting with a merchant, you can sell whichever tabs to that merchant that you want to level up your reputation with their faction. Okay, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a minute, but just know that that's what you can do with your inventory. We could also choose to hover over items, and it'll tell us how it compares to what we are already wearing. So on the right there is the weapon, the scrappy auto gun. That's what I got here. That's what I just picked up off this enemy. 5 to 5 damage compared to the 10 to 15 or the 13 to 18 that I'm currently wearing, right? So I don't want anything to do with that. So that's why we're going to send it all over here. We're going to collect it all, send it to our cargo list, which we'll use later to increase our reputation with somebody. Come over here, do the same thing with this. We're going to send it all, collect it. And holding down tab is what you're going to want to do a lot when you're running around the game. It's an easy way to spot a lot of objects that you can interact with, but it's not going to spot all of them for you. So another thing you need to be aware of is the map. Now, the map is probably the safest way to make sure you looted everything in a zone before you leave. So every once in a while, when you're walking around in a zone, open up your map and look for these little icons like this right here. And it'll be storage containers that you have seen or discovered or passed by that you didn't notice when you're walking through the zone. And there are a lot of them. And sometimes there's some really good stuff in those. So make sure that you do that. Make sure you open up your map with M and just check. So corpses. These are all corpses of enemies that I haven't looted yet. But if there had been a container back here or over here, right, it would be on the map there. And this is by far how I spot most of the containers that I've walked vaguely near without noticing and just pop up in the map. I'm like, oh, cool, there's loot back there. I got to go get it. So definitely take advantage of that. So speaking of loot and inventory, here's our inventory. Our inventory is shared across all of our characters. So each character doesn't need to have their own inventory like in many CRPGs, right? So instead, you'll have one inventory, all your characters share it, and it's rather large. I haven't had any problems with it. And also it's real easy to send the stuff to your like infinite cargo that you trade away. If that's ever a problem, you just, click on it and click add to cargo, boom, it's out of your inventory. It's not your problem anymore. Okay, so that's your inventory. This is where things you pick up and choose to take go. Then we've got all of our various slots here. So we've got a helmet slot, a chest, we've got an amulet slot, and then we've got 2 different weapon slots. So you can dual wield various types of weapons as long as they're both one-hand weapons. So you could do like a chainsaw in one hand and a pistol in the other, or a sword in one and a pistol in the other, or you could do a 2-handed assault rifle, or you could do an arc rifle, right? There's different loadouts that you could do, and you can have 2 different ones at any time, which is going to give you access to different abilities, right? So if we look at this one here, it says it's going to give us single shot and dead eye shot. Those are 2 different abilities that we get from having that weapon out, whereas this one here would just give a single shot. Then you've got your pendant slot up here. You've got a ring slot. You've got gloves. And then you've got this slot here, which can handle things like emergency injectors, which are going to basically heal the character. If it's about to fall unconscious, it'll prevent it from happening and heal it up. This is a cool item I found. Then you've got your boot slot. And then below that, these are your 4 slot items. Like, so we could put a grenade here, and we could put a fire grenade here. And if he was qualified, we'd be able to put the medikit here, but he's not. At the top here, you can sort things. You can sort by type in ascending order, name, date, right? You can sort by all of this stuff if you would like to. You can also sort by weapons, armor, accessories, usables, notables, this kind of stuff. On the left here, of course, you've got all of your character stats. What stats they have, what stats they're getting from gear that you're wearing. So for instance, we can see we have a +10 commerce and a +10 to lore Imperium right here. And that's because of this right here. It says the wearer of this amulet gains +10 to commerce and lore Imperium. You can see your character's level. This character's level 11, 33 wounds. We can see what our armor is. So in this game, the way it works is first armor is deflected. If it's possible, armor will be deflected. And the remaining damage that you take will then have to go through your armor. So if you have 25% armor, that means that 25% of the damage that makes it through the deflection is going to be reduced. So you're only going to take 75% damage. Then there's dodge. If you dodge an attack, you take no damage from it. Then you've got dodge reduction, which is how much you reduce enemies' chance of dodging your attacks. And then you've got resolve. So your character's resolve is what determines how much momentum is added at the beginning of each turn or after killing an enemy, right? So this character has 5 resolve. Then up here at the very top, we've got a couple of arrows. You can use these arrows to cycle between your various party members. You can also just click on them up here if you'd like to. You've also got this appearance settings right here. So we can click on this and you can choose different colors for your accent color for your outfit. You can choose to show your helmet or not show your helmet. That's up to you. And you can choose to show your backpack or not. Once you've created your character, it looks like this is all you can change on them after they've been made in terms of their appearance. There is a way to completely respec your character, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Okay, so that is your inventory, or in other words, this button right here. Then you've got this button right here, your character screen. There's a lot of good information in here. First one that it's going to show you is your summary. And this is going to show whether you're following the Iconoclast, the Dogmatic, or the Heretical, philosophies in life here. And you're constantly going to be given dialogue options where you are told like, hey, this is the Iconoclast option. So if you choose this, you're going to be leveling up Iconoclast and you're going to be advancing through its various levels. And these 3 things are called convictions. And as you level them up, you can right click on them and then you can see that there's an ability here. Right? This is if I get to level 1 follower, which I did on this character. We've got it. See, we have currently 25 out of 15. And this gives us temporary wounds equal to their own resolve. So based on how much resolve a character has, he starts with that much temporary wounds. Temporary wounds are like a shield. It's temporary HP that you start with, right? So you can check these out and see, what each of these passives is before you start deciding which way you want to go with your character and what passives you want to unlock. If you get the first level of Dogmatic, you're going to get Grim Determination, which is going to give your allies 10% chance to survive with 1 wound instead of falling unconscious. So when they would have died, they have a chance to survive instead with 1 HP left, basically. And just know that these choices are usually very different from one another. Like Iconoclast tends to be very merciful or benevolent, or, you know, trying to do good by the people around them, trying to do what's best or what the right thing is to do, maybe the nice thing is to do. Where Dogmatic or Heretical might say, kill the person, Iconoclast might say, you know what, it was a mistake, we're going to let it go this time and, you know, don't do it again. So it's very different choices a lot of times. So it may be harder to get some of these passives than you're initially thinking, unless you're okay to go full evil on your playthrough. Next, we've got features. These are your abilities and your talents that you've unlocked on your character. It's just a nice little recap of the choices that you have made while you've leveled up. Then you've got the archetypes. So your archetypes is what you chose or what was chosen for you, depending on what you did in the character creation. If you chose your homeworld, your origin, your triumph, or your darkest hour, right? Like if you chose all these things, then great. It's what you chose. If you picked a predetermined character, so you didn't have to make those choices, great. That's just what that's going to be. It's going to show you that. It's also where you come every time you level up. You click on this to spend your ranks. We have 2 ranks available, so we can come in here. And the choices that are available to you are going to depend on the level itself. Sometimes you'll come in here and it'll let you choose between characteristics like agility, perception, strength, and sometimes it'll let you choose between talents, right? Just depends on the level and what's available at that level. So for this one, let's go ahead and we'll pick agility, and then we'll pick for the passive here, we would want to pick something that was benefiting a soldier that's constantly using ranged weapons. So if we wanted to use plasma weapons, we'd want to grab plasma weapon proficiency. If we wanted to make ourselves harder to kill, we would say we want to increase our wounds by half our character's level. So in this case, it will not die would increase this character's wounds or his HP by half of the current level, which is 11. So it says it rounds up. So that would be half of 12 would be 6, right? It'd get 6 HP. So it'd go from 33 to 39 health. And just be aware, if you've got a character that you want to play as a tank, you're going to want to get its strength up to 45, and then you're going to want to get heavy armor proficiency. You know, just keep that in mind when you're choosing what stats to grab early on before you find that heavy armor. It sucks if you find heavy armor and you can't put it on your tank. So this time I'm going to go ahead and grab ballistic skill. Ballistic is ranged weapon training. It's going to improve our accuracy with all forms of ranged weapons, and nothing feels worse than missing your tech. So let's go ahead and grab that. Now, because I hadn't upgraded my characters in 2 levels, I have 2 more choices to make. It says I've got 2 more here. And if you see ones with a lock next to them, it might say you already have this feature. So that just means you can't get it again. And below your talents that you can choose is going to be your key passives. These will change based on your character. And then below that, when you hit level 36, you've got exemplar. Next, we've got reputation. So your reputation is your faction reputation. You're going to run into various factions throughout the game. You're going to find their traders, and the way you improve your standing with them is to trade items to them. We'll go more in depth into this in a minute. Next tab you have is the biography, where you can come and see like kind of a recap of your character and everything that it's done so far and how it got to the place that it got to. Then you've got below that your journal, which you can open up with J. It's going to show you a few things, actually. It's going to show your quests that are active, as well as completed if you want to show the completed quests. But there's going to be a lot of clutter here if you leave that there. So then there's the quest. It's going to show you which chapter you're on, which quest, companion or other. And then it's going to show you rumors that you've found and heard of and that you can choose to investigate or follow up on if you want. And it's going to show you your contracts if you have any. Then the next one is your map. You can see the map of wherever you are. In this case, we're on the ship, so we can see a map of the ship. You can right click on places on the map and the character or characters that you're controlling will head to that place. It's a real easy way to get around big areas if you've already explored them and you're not really concerned about looking around anymore. You can just send your character to the other end of that zone and they'll run on over there. Likewise, it's a good way to see important points of interest, important people that you can talk to, and all of that kind of stuff. Then you've got Corpus Valencius. So this is all of your information. This is tutorials, dictionaries, chronicles, all kinds of information in here. If you want to dig in, the tutorial section is really, really handy. So is the dictionary. If there's something that you don't know or a term you're not familiar with, this is a great place to come find it. Not to mention that the game has a fantastic, just an absolutely fantastic way of handling tooltips, where if you see something that you don't understand, you can always bob it out and hover over it to see what it does. So right here, we've got exploit. You hover over it and it says if the operative hits a target with an exploit stack, yada, 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 right? It explains what an exploit is. Same with Deadshot, right? So take advantage of the tooltips in this game. They're absolutely phenomenal and can be incredibly informative. If you're not sure what a word is, just hover over that word and it'll tell you. And likewise, you can come here to the Corpus Valencius and look for the item itself. Below that, we have Voidship Management, which we'll get into. And then we have Colony Management right here. We'll talk about that later. And we have Cargo Manager. This is where you can manage all of your cargo lists and everything. And these are what you're going to use to build up your reputation. Anytime you send, you can right click on anything and send it to cargo. And then when you send it to cargo, you can interact with a faction and you can give them that cargo to increase your reputation with them. Okay, next let's talk about the ship system, your spaceship, as well as the universe, the map, how to operate it, and everything that you can do out here, including acquiring colonies and researching projects and traveling the universe, right? There's a lot of depth. Oh, and ship-to-ship combat. So let's talk about all of that now, everything that can happen out in space, because you are a rogue trader. You're traveling through the universe, doing all of these things. So let's talk about it. First, let's look at what's on screen here. We've got this button here, which takes us back to the bridge. So we'd go back into our ship and we can walk around on our ship and all of that good stuff. We've got our health bar right here. This tells us that right now we have 117 out of 176 health because we were in some ship-to-ship combat. We took some damage and we have not repaired ourselves. How do we repair our ship? Well, we click this button right here, whole repair, and it's going to tell us that we could regain our health 1 point for every point of scrap we use, right? Right now, I only have 42 scraps, so I could use that. And now I've healed my ship's health up to 159 out of 176. I don't have any more scrap though. So what if I ran out of scrap, but my health was all the way down here, right? I had like 10 health out of 176. Well, then what I could do is I could come into this menu right here. This is our Voidship Management. Now this is where you can see the components of your ship, upgrades for your ship, and the posts on your ship. So let's talk about what each of those is really quick. But first, as I mentioned, imagine that you're stuck at 10 health. What do? You're out of scrap. You only have 10 health. The next time you run into an enemy, they're going to kill you, right? So you can come into here. And one of the ways to upgrade your ship is by investing scrap into its hull and investing scrap into its ram. Alternatively, if you have invested scrap into those items and your ship is low on health, you can pull the scrap back out. So you can click this and you can say downgrade the RAM and give me that scrap back, right? And then you could use that scrap to then heal 50 points back into your health of your ship, right? So this would be something you only do if you absolutely had to. If you found yourself in a pinch, you have no more health and you have no more scrap and you're hurting, repair your ship, you could downgrade something and then put it into your ship's health so you can get through that next battle. These are the only two that you simply spend scrap to upgrade, right? Your hull, which is going to increase the overall health of your ship, and your ram, which is going to increase the damage that your ram does when you attack enemies, as well as decrease the damage you take. So those right there consume scrap when you're upgrading them. These ones over here, right? You've got an engine, shields, auspex, armor. You've got your port and starboard weapons, your dorsal weapon, your prow weapons. So the way you upgrade these is by finding upgrades. So for instance, right here, if we look at our port and starboard weapons, we have multiple weapons available to us. We had this weapon here, which is going to do 14 damage per shot. And then we found this one, which does 21 damage per shot, right? A 50% increase in our damage effectively, which is massive. So that was a great upgrade that we found while playing the game. And we were able to equip it to our starboard side of the ship. So if I can help it, I want to be facing my starboard side of the ship towards my enemies when it comes time to deal damage to them. Alternatively, if I'm not doing damage to them, I want to face the other side of the ship to them so that they're not damaging my good weapon. But I'll show you some examples of ship combat in a moment so that you can really see that all play out. Next, you will have ship upgrades. So how do you upgrade your ship? Well, you're going to get into combat, you're going to explore the universe, and you're going to gain ship levels, basically. And as you level up your ship, this bar is going to fill. See this little green circle that's filling up right here? Right now it's this full, and then when it gets more full, we're going to unlock more stuff. So right now we've got these upgrades so far. We got Swing Run unlocked, which is going to basically allow the ship to do a U-turn, which is really powerful because in combat, enemies will oftentimes try to flank you. They'll try to get behind you, knowing that all of your weapons are mostly pointed forward. You don't have a lot of firepower that can reach behind you. So you've got a lot that can go sideways, left or right. You've got some that, and then you've got a lot that can go forward. And then you've got your torpedoes, which we'll talk about. You can control them and they can go any which way. Now we've also got torpedo control unlocked. This is basically going to let us move our torpedo 5 extra slots in a single turn, which is incredibly powerful as well. Then another upgrade we picked up was flagship base post abilities. This is going to let your ship turn sharper effectively. So when it's time to move your ship, and like I mentioned, a lot of what makes combat difficult is getting your ship pointed in the right direction. You know, the enemies are always going to try to end up behind you. So the sharper that you can turn, the easier your life is going to be when it comes time to fight back against your enemies. We also picked up this reinforced shield, which is going to allow us to basically choose which side of the ship we really want to enhance the shields on, so that that side of the ship is taking less damage when the enemy attacks us, which can be a really valuable tool. And then there's more of these, but you don't just simply unlock the abilities and then they show up on your ship. What you have to do is first, you're going to unlock the abilities so that your ship is able to perform these abilities, but you have to have someone that knows how to execute them, right? Because the ship isn't going to do this on its own. Someone in one of these posts is going to be responsible for doing that. And so you need to have someone assigned to the post that knows how to do the thing that you learned how to do, basically. So you'll say, I want my ship to be able to do a swing run. And then you'll, in your post section, pick someone that has the ability to do a swing run and put them in that post. Now, choosing posts, what you do is you just click like, so Master of Maneuvers. I could click on this, and right now there's nobody assigned to that. But by clicking on them, I can see what abilities they would be able to have. So it tells me that this guy would be able to strafe if I put him there. Our ship would be able to strafe as long as I upgraded the ability to strafe in this section, right? He would know how to do that. If I put her there, she would know how to do the swing run. And if I put him there, he would know how to do the swing run. But we've already got the swing run here, and it's great. And then once you have these abilities slotted, you can upgrade them over here. Now, in order to upgrade them, it's going to give you a checklist of things that need to be true. I would need 100 scrap. I would have to have used the ability once, which we have, and then my hull would need to be at full health. So we'd need to heal up our hull and then also collect 100 scrap on top of having used the ability, and we'd be able to upgrade that. So just be aware of the fact that none of the abilities that you get here will work until you assign someone to a post that can give you that ability, okay? It's a two-step process. This and this are linked together. And then in the top left here, it tells you the name of your ship. It also tells you how much XP it has and how long until the next level. Now back to this screen, because there's one more really important thing that is on this screen right now that is incredibly easy to miss. So around the end of Act 1, you're going to get access to this screen. And at first, all you're going to be able to do is fly around the zone that you start in, or in the star system that you start in, right? You'll be able to go from the planets there, you'll fully explore it. And then once you finish Act 1, this little button down here is going to be available, and it's really easy to miss. So click on that. Now it's going to open up this right here, and you've got a map of the universe, basically all the different places that you'll eventually be able to explore and discover and go visit, right? But right now you're going to start right here, and then you'll be able to travel. See how this line connecting this is green, and see how this one is red? So green is a safe journey. Red is like, no, you don't want to do that, right? It's increasingly dangerous. If it's yellow, then orange, then red. So green safest, red least safe, and bad things happen when you do an unsafe journey. Basically, in Warhammer 40k, the way that you travel through the universe is you have a navigator, and a navigator is able to pilot your ship through the warp. And when you go into the warp, it's basically this little deal with the devil that your crew makes to save time on a journey, right? To travel a distance that would normally take years to travel, but instead do it in days, right? You're going into this other realm, this other dimension to save time, and then popping back out at your destination. But the problem is, it's a twisted dimension. Like I said, it's a little bit of a deal with the devil, and bad things happen when you're there unless you have a really good navigator, or unless you've spent insight points to make the journey safer. So navigators are the only ones that can pilot a ship through the warp, and that's why it's important that your ship have a navigator, and a good one at that, because it's going to make your travels all the safer. So what we're looking at here is the question marks are the places that we have not been to yet. The other ones are places that we have visited yet, right? Because we started down here, we made our way up, and we ultimately got to this place that we're at right now. That's what this is. We can travel here safely. We could travel here, and it would be kind of safe, right? It's a little bit, it's, you know, yellow's not bad. It's pretty unlikely something bad's going to happen. But if we did try to travel to here, it's going to tell us this is deadly. I mean, it is not like, you know, you're going to die trying to do this, right? We could spend our insight points, we have 5 of them, to make it a safe journey to get there. Or we could reduce the route difficulty to unsafe, right? Or we could take a bit of a gamble and we could only put 1 point in here and just make it dangerous and hope nothing too bad happens on the way there. And it's really hard to tell you what might or might not happen without spoiling the game. So I'm going to keep it super vague here because the first time I tried to record this and do an example, something very spoilery happened. So just know, you know, really bad things can happen that you will have to deal with. A lot of times people will maybe go crazy or they'll see things, or, you know, it might turn people against you. You never know what the repercussions of subjecting your ship of thousands and thousands of people, right? Your ship has thousands and thousands of people on it. It is a massive ship. It is basically an entire city. Think of your ship as a city. It's really big, right? So when you subject all of them to something that horrible, bad things are going to happen. People are going to break and, you know, they might turn on you. So just be careful what you do and be aware that there might be some repercussions for doing it. Now, let's go ahead and travel to here as an example. Okay, this is only unsafe, so we should be okay. We're going to get this screen here. We're going to get a little mention of what's happening, and we made it relatively unharmed, okay? And now we're sitting in a new star system. So now what we would do when we get to a new star system is we're going to go visit all the planets and see what they have available to us. They might have colonies for us to acquire or civilizations for us to explore, right? So we go to a new planet, we click begin scan. It's going to show us what's on this planet. This one had some cargo that we could grab. So we grabbed the cargo, we got that. Great. That's all that's there basically, right? So we go to the next one. All right, we're arriving at the next one. We scan this one to see what it's got for us, and it's got plasteel. Now with plasteel, we could use an extractum if we had it to extract plasteel from this planet so that we could have it up here as a resource that we could eventually spend to acquire other things. Now we'll go down to this last planet, which says it has a quest for us that showed up when we got here. And we would be able to basically go visit that place, and we'd pick our crew that we're going to send there, and we'd hop on down. Now there's one other thing that we didn't get to happen, and that's that there's no ships floating around for us to do combat with. So let's show you what to do now after you fully explored that place. Let's say we went to that planet, we fully explored it, we did the quest. Now we want to try to get to these places, but we can't go there yet, right? Because we need to chart new routes. We need to figure out how to get there. So we click this button right here, and then it sends that pulse out, and it's going to show us how to get to those places. So we would be able to travel here. It says it's unsafe. We're going to take the risk, right? We could click this here. We could spend 1 point of insight. We have 6 down there to make it safer, but you know, YOLO, let's see what happens. We're going to go there, and we're not going to too much worry about the lore that's going on because I'll let you guys experience all of that for yourselves. This one has some space dust. What space dust is, it's just basically you fly in and you collect items from it, right? That's where you can go and you can get cargo. This one also has a gutted void ship that we could go to, and we'd be able to board. There's this void ship there, right? I'll let you guys do that. Let's try to find some space combat real quick though. We're going to chart a new course because we really want to hit a system with some people in it. Okay, we're going to go here. I am going to try to make it safe. I'm going to spend some of these points, knock it down to safe, and we're just going to hop on over there. We're going to visit this. Here we go. Okay, so we've got some pirates. Now we should be able to fly in here and engage in some ship-to-ship combat. All right, so we could attempt to hail the pirates. We could attack first. Right now, we're just going to attack because we want to show you what ship-to-ship combat is and how it works in this game. Okay, now let's talk about ship-to-ship battle. All right, so when you get into combat, your ship is going to be protected by shields, but so is the enemy ship. So you're going to want to pierce the shield and then damage the side in which you depleted the shield. There's a shield on each side of the enemy ships. Similarly, your ship is going to have shields of its own. So you're going to want to face the side of your ship that has shields up towards your enemies. If your shields take too much damage, you can always restart them using the restart shields action to get your shields back. But if you do restart your ship's shields, it is going to reduce your ship's combat efficiency for the next turn, as well as reduce its movement speed and firing range. Another thing to be aware of is that you can use all of your attacks in a single turn if you can make use of them. So for instance, this one right here, I can use this. If it was to my left, I'd be able to use these ones. if it was somewhere nearby, I'd be able to use that one and as this one here. But as you can see, none of those attacks would land right now anyway. You're going to find yourself in a position like this often, so this seems like a good place to start this in. Enemies are always going to try to circle behind your ship or be just outside of the range of any of your various weapons. So this green area here is your movement. So there's 3 phases of movement. You've got your acceleration phase, then your second and your third phase here. So during the acceleration phase, you can use your ram, and that's the only time you can use your ram. So if you're going to fire your ram off at an enemy, aka ram into them with your ship, you have to choose to do so somewhere in the first phase of movement. Now you can use every single one of your attacks. Those are the red icons down there in the middle bottom of the screen. You can use every single attack every time it's your turn. You can use all of those attacks in any phase of movement. You can use it during the accelerating phase, or you can use it in the other 2 phases. It's up to you. It kind of depends where your ship's at and what you can get it pointed at so that those weapons can land their attacks on the enemy. Now, on the left and right side of your abilities down there, you'll see abilities that we are unlocking as we upgrade the ship, but you do have to travel all 3 phases of movement before your turn is over. So it's up to you when you attack. You can attack anytime you want. You could go here and then do one attack, then you could go here, do another attack, then you could end up here and do your last attack if you wanted to. The only thing that you have to know is you have to end up somewhere in this 3rd phase. Your turn cannot end until you get there, but you can use your weapons anytime you want inside of that span. So this enemy is behind us. This is a situation, like I said, you'll find yourself in a lot when you're fighting because the enemies are smart. They know that, all your weapons are pointed forward or to the side. You don't really have anything facing back right now. So what can you do? Well, if you have unlocked the swing run ability and you've got a crew member in that slot, right? Now we can come here and we can turn this bad boy around on a dime using this ability. And now we are facing our enemy. Unfortunately, we're just outside of range of being able to actually hit this guy, but his torpedo that's flying, it only has 1 move left and then it's going to disappear. So we don't need to worry about that. That's what that 1 means. I'll put some torpedoes down to create a problem for my enemy because I can't reach them with any of my current weapons, but I can put torpedoes down, right? There we go. And now I'll be able to send this torpedo at this person here. Now, actually, I wish I had put that this way, thinking about it, because he's heading this way. So it would have been I should have predicted that he was going this way. I was going to put it that way, right? But what are we going to do? We're doing it live. Okay, that torpedo expired. This one's going to expire. And he's turning towards me. Oh, and it looks like he might have done me a little bit of a favor there. He turned into my torpedo, which I didn't expect him to do, which is great. That's fantastic. So we're going to tell the torpedo that we put out, right? We're going to control the torpedo before we get to control ourselves again. We're going to say, hey, go here and hit him. All right, as you can see, torpedoes do a massive amount of damage. We really chunked him down with that thing. And now we're facing him, which is great for us. He made a huge mistake flying. Normally, they never come into your damage zone like that, but hey, we'll take this. So now we would normally be able to hit him with our lance weapon, but our lance weapon has been taken out of action through damage during this battle. What we're going to do instead is we're going to inch forward and we're going to hit him with this ability here. And actually, if we come here, we can hit him with both. We'll hit him with this ability, see how that can hit him. So we'd be able to choose him with that and then be able to choose him with that if he survives the first. So this might be the final turn of this battle. Let's check it out. So we're going to do that. Send that first shot off. You don't hit everything in that radius. You only hit one thing. You get to choose the thing in that area to attack. Okay, so he was left with a little bit of health. So now we're going to do this one. And this is, we can attack any square in this range. So we're going to hit him with that cannon. Oh man, we weren't able to finish him off. Okay, that's okay. Now, we are low on health. So one of the things we could do, wouldn't be a bad idea to do if we felt like we were in danger of taking damage, is a couple things here. So he's right next to us. He's going to be able to fire on us. He or she, I shouldn't assume. Now, since we know where the damage is likely going to come from, it's going to come from this side of the ship, right? That is the starboard side of the ship, or the right side of it, because it's traveling down. We've already got that side of the ship beefed up to reduce damage here using our reinforced shields. So not much else we can do there. So another thing we could do, since we know we're going to take damage here, is reboot our shields. And that's going to refill all the shields that we had that were depleted by the enemy, but at the cost of our mobility. So our next turn, we're not going to be able to move very far at all. So we're going to go ahead and do that. There we go. Our shield was just rejuvenated. Now we get to finish our turn, because remember I said you have to go into that deep green color, that third phase of movement before. So I'm going to try to get right behind him where he won't be able to hit me. Scoop, just like that. Now I've got nothing else to hit him with, so my turn's over. And it looks like, to me, he's trying to flee. So we saw 3 over his head. I believe he is trying to escape this battle. So we're going to go chasing him now. We've got limited movement, unfortunately, because we did deplete our shields. So he's going to get some distance on us here. Torpedo's going harmlessly in the other direction. We don't got to worry about that. And it's out of turns. Now we've got 2 moves until he disappears, basically. We might be able to get him. Let's see. All right, so if we do like this, go ahead and try that. I don't know if this will be enough to take him out. We're going to go for it. Try and chase him down here. And it was enough. Perfect. There we go. And that's how the ship battle works in this game. You've got the 3 phases of movement. You have to go all the way to the 3rd phase before your turn can end. You want to try to position yourself behind your enemies, and they're likewise going to be behind you. Usually you're going to be fighting more than one of them at a time. So it's a bit of a cat and mouse game where you're trying to minimize the amount of damage you're taking because you don't want to just sit there and tank it all, right? Because we just got 56 scrap from that fight, but we lost a ton of health. So almost all the scrap that we got that we would maybe be able to spend upgrading our ship is going to go back into repairing our ship, right? Because that was a pretty brutal battle. There was 4 ships at the beginning of that fight. I showed you the last ship. Now we're done with that. And look, we have 114 health. So if we want to top off our health again, you know, there goes that sweet upgrade material. Boom. But now our ship is almost at full health. So, you know, break even. Good news is that our ship did get experience and now is level 3. Now, because our ship has leveled up, we've got 2 things that we can upgrade or 2 things we can unlock. So we'll click on the first one and it says you can unlock any one of these abilities. But remember, we can't use these abilities until we have assigned someone to a post up here that has the ability to do that. So let's come here and we can put her here, right? We'll put her in Master of Etherics. And it says that she's actually, you know what? I want to put her here. Okay, because we're going to get Arc Augury. This is going to increase the range of our next attack by 2 spots. That's huge because the enemies are usually right outside of our range. So they position themselves like that very nicely. So let's do that. We're going to grab this right here, that one. We're going to grab that. And then for the other one, we can go ahead and do Arc Warp Wave here is going to give us more maneuverability, but it's going to hurt our ship based on how much health our ship is missing. So if we're not missing any health, then it's not going to hurt us. We're going to take damage equal to 15 to 20% of the missing health if we do a 45-degree turn and double that if we do a 90. So basically you wouldn't want to use this if you're missing health. But if you're not missing any health, it's just a free extra maneuverability. So let's go ahead and grab that too and complete. Okay, so now that we've unlocked these abilities and then we assign people to the posts that could do those things, we have all 6 of these abilities, right? Which is going to make the next battle easier for us, right? Because we've got more abilities, more maneuverability, better range on our attacks, right? These are the kind of things that are really going to make the fights easier for you. Maneuverability and range on your attacks. Those 2 things are huge. So going for those is never going to be a bad idea for you. And that is everything you guys need to know about space and exploring space in this game. It's a big part of the game. You're either going to be out on, you know, with your crew, fighting it out and exploring one of these planets or one of these ships or one of these asteroids that you find, or you're going to be floating around in space, you know, visiting planets and seeing what they have to offer you. Here we've got a station that we just defeated the enemies that surrounded it, and it says that we could go ahead and land on here and go ahead and further explore that more now that we, you know, eliminated the pirates that were surrounding it. This is a massive part of the game. It's one of my favorite parts of the game, actually. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it when I first opened up the map, and then before I understood how it all worked and how you travel from one place to the next and start unlocking these areas. But man, once I started engaging with the system, it's really, really fun, and I hope you enjoy all of this as much as I have. So next, let's talk about reputation with the various factions in the world. So we've got Drusus Blessing here. When you see a ship like this, a lot of times what you can do is you can tell them that you want to trade. And this is going to give you a nice little menu here, which shows you what you can get from them. So trading requires 2 things. It's going to require your profit factor, which is basically your buying power. Since your character literally owns entire civilizations, it doesn't make sense to charge you 50 gold for something, right? So what you have instead is a profit factor, you know, your profit and loss. Like, how much more are you making than it takes you to run your kingdom? What can you afford? So we've got a profit factor of 19 on this character, which means we would be able to buy this item here, but we wouldn't be able to buy the repulsor shield or the military ceramite, right? These 2 we can't afford. Now, we can't buy any of them, however, because we don't have our Imperial Navy reputation leveled up. So the way we would level that up is to sell things to them, which is going to give us reputation with them. By giving them items, we get reputation with them. So here you can click on the reputation tab and you can see exactly what they're looking for. Alternatively, you can just say hide untradeable, and then only the things you could trade to them would show up. I don't have any of the materials that the Imperial Navy wants because this party has just reached this zone where all of these items are going to start dropping for me. But once we level up our reputation, let's say we got to 1, we'd be able to buy this item and this item here because we would have the reputation and the profit factor to buy it. Now, when we got to 2, we still wouldn't be able to afford this or this because we don't have the 20 and 22 profit factor required. So just know that buying items costs profit factor, and unlocking them to buy them is going to require your reputation to be a high enough rank. If you can afford something, there's not much of a reason not to buy it because you do have the profit factor to afford it. They tend to have finite number of those resources, so you buy what they have and you move on. Next, let's talk about colonies and projects. So let's head over to Falstone here where I have a colony set up because of some choices that we made. And then when we click on it, we can see the projects that this colony now has access to. So basically, if you find a planet that has civilization on it, you can choose to adopt it as your colony through a series of choices that you may make to, either end it, subdue it, or take it under your wing. There's a lot of different ways that you can handle the RP around that. And one of those choices might end up with that being one of your colonies where you can now perform projects. And projects are going to be something that you can have that colony do to unlock new things in the game. So the first one we did here is complete. Now we could do another one, and we've got a couple of options that are available to us right now. So the first project is Touched by Holiness, which would give us complacency +2. And what complacency does is it increases your profit factor on that planet by 10%, but it decreases the speed at which you finish projects on the planet by 10% as well. So it's a little bit of a kiss curse, right? You're making more money, but things are happening slower there. We could also choose to go for indulgencies for sale. So we could take an additional profit factor from this colony, which is, that's our spending power. It tells us what we can buy. And this one would also give us 5,000 reputation with this faction here. So you'd be choosing between some complacency or between profit factor and a reputation bonus. Now, these other ones we cannot get yet, right? And it says that we can't choose them because we don't have the profit factor required, which is 25. Our profit factor right now is only 21, and we don't have the reputation with them either, right? We need 28,000 rep. So for the sake of this one, let's go ahead and take this one here. We're going to take indulgence for that extra profit factor and that extra reputation. Execute. So now we've started that. See the little hourglass is there saying that this is on its way, and it tells us that it's 0% executed. And if we come out to our colony management, we can see this line rotating around here. And as it fills up, this line will fill up as you play until it's completely full, letting you know the progress of it. So when it's 50% done, this will be like 50% filled in, this line around the perimeter. So if you're ever curious, like how much longer it has, you can always check here under your colony management. You can also come here to assign more projects. And these projects will give you everything from resources to even weapons and reputation. Next, let's quickly touch on the tactical phase. If it happens that you're the one that surprises the enemy as opposed to them surprising you in battle, then you'll get a tactical phase in which you get to set up the positioning of all of your troops. You get to move them where you want them to be when the battle starts. Now, if the enemy is the one that catches you off guard, or if they're the ones ambushing you, then your party is going to start wherever it was as soon as you made contact with the enemy. So if you surprise them, you get to move them around and put them in a strategical position. And if they surprise you, then you don't get to do that. Next, let's talk about cover, what it is and how it works. So when you're playing the game and you're moving your characters, you'll see two different types of symbols on objects throughout the room. One is a shield that has a skull on it, and that's telling you that that's full cover. And full cover is going to reduce the enemy's chance of hitting you by 60%, as long as the object is between you and the enemy. If you're on the same side of the object as the enemy, then it's not going to be in the middle, it's not going to be between you, and it's not going to reduce the chance of that enemy hitting you. Now, the other symbol is also a shield type of symbol, but it's only half filled and it does not have a skull on it. What that's telling you is it's giving you about half cover, and it's going to reduce the enemy's chance of hitting you by 35%. So 60% reduced chance of hitting you with the skull, 35% reduced chance of hitting you with the half cover, and those percentages are subject to change based on the difficulty you choose. So if you choose a really high difficulty, they may be less effective in reducing the enemy's chances of hitting you. On top of that, standing behind cover can also grant you buffs based on passives and abilities that you have active at the time. So it's both a defensive and an offensive thing. Next, let's talk about rumors. Occasionally, when you're out and about on these planets and roaming the galaxies, you're going to get rumors, or you're going to catch wind of rumors. And the thing about the rumors tab is you can come in here and read what the rumor is, and then you have to actually go to the place that the rumor is telling you about to find out if that rumor holds any weight, if it's true or if it's not. Sometimes these rumors will pan out and sometimes they won't be anything at all. So it's going to be up to you to kind of figure that out by reading the rumor and heading to the location and checking into it. Now let's talk about contracts. Contracts are going to be these things that pop up in your journal, and you're going to have the option to basically exchange goods for other types of goods. So if you have one resource, you can convert that resource into profit, for example, so that you have more purchasing power. So in this case right here, I could convert 5 of my plasteel into 3 profit, and I could click complete contract, and then that has done that for me. Now my profit factor just went up to 26 thanks to this contract that I have completed. You'll start seeing these projects once you get into chapter 2 and you start exploring the galaxy. Next, let's talk about respecking and how to do it, because this is going to be a big one for some people. If they decide that they're too far into the game to start over, but they're really not happy with how they set up their character, they can come here to High Factotum Janris Danrock and talk to him. And one of his options is going to be, my retinue and I are in need of training. And if you choose that option, we'll say, I will show you your sparring chambers. And then it's going to pop this screen up and it says, select a character to reset their progress. And so then you could reset the progress of that character, thereby allowing you to kind of respec. Another thing that you can do with him is add characters to your party. So if you wish to bolster your retinue with skilled fighters, let's say you don't have a full party because you sent too many people away, or you maybe made some decisions that resulted in you not having a full party, you can come here and pick someone up. You can say, I wish to bolster my retinue with skilled fighters, and you will have the option to create another character that will be added to your party. Another tip is to save often, because sometimes you are going to perhaps fail a battle. Sometimes something isn't going to go the way you intended it to go. Maybe you misclick. Who knows what it is, but it's always nice to be able to load that last save if that happens, because I have had it happen in this CRPG and in just about every CRPG I played where the last autosave was uncomfortably far away. So be sure to manually save every once in a while to make sure that you're not having to redo an hour's worth of progress because the last autosave happened to be a little bit farther away than you would have liked. All right, next let's talk about skill checks or speech checks. When you're in the middle of a conversation, you'll see it says something like coercion 30. Now, the thing to know about this is the bigger the number, the better, because basically what's happening behind the scenes here is the game is going to add the coercion check of 30 that's on screen right now to your personal skill level in coercion, which let's say your skill level is 40. So 30 plus 40 is 70. Then the game's going to roll a 100-sided die. If you roll less than 70, you successfully pass the check. If you roll higher than 70, you fail the check. So because you're trying to roll less than the sum of the value on screen plus your character's skill in that check, you want the number on screen to be as big as possible, because that's going to maximize your chance of rolling less than the sum. If all of that was complicated, just know that the bigger the number that appears on screen next to the check, the better. That means your odds of passing it are much higher. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it for this complete beginner guide. If you're still here, you're a legend, man. You stuck through the whole thing. Let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, or subscribe to let the algorithm know that this thing's worth showing to more people. I would greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, or maybe I didn't answer something that you were looking for an answer for, feel free to ask it down in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer every single one. If you're someone that's on the fence about trying this game out and you like either the Warhammer 40k universe or you like classic RPGs, you have to do it. This thing is amazing. I am having a blast with this game. I can't put it down, and I can't wait to hear what everybody else thinks of it. Another shout out to Owlcat Games for giving me access to this game early so that I can make this guide for you guys. Massive shout out to my YouTube channel members. If you want to become a YouTube channel member for perks like behind the scenes footage, access to a private Discord channel, and having your name appear at the end of these videos, hit the join button down below. If you're not sure what to do next, maybe check out one of these other amazing videos popping up on screen right now. See you in the next one.